He wasn't just forgotten. Dennis Viollet was never even seen. He holds the record 32 league goals in a single season for Manchester United. More than Best, more than Rooney, more than Ronaldo, but no statue, no chant, no face in the museum. He lived through Munich, pulled from the wreckage head bleeding, teammates gone. 3 months later, he came back and scored more goals than ever. No roar, no reward, just a man in red doing what the dead no longer could. And when they rebuilt, they replaced him, pushed him out like he was never there. No tribute, no goodbye, just silence. The kind of silence that buries records and erases the ones who held them. Subscribe if you believe a man who lived through fire and still gave them goals should never disappear from football's memory. Dennis Viollet, the record holder they never bothered to remember. He was born on the 20th of September, 1933, in Fallowfield, Manchester, a city built on chimneys, grit, and grey afternoons. Dennis Sidney Viollet. Quiet lad, quick feet. Raised on streets where football was breath and the badge was earned, not sold. In 1949, at 16, he joined Manchester United as an amateur. By 1950, Busby had seen enough, he signed him professional. No interviews, no promise of stardom. Just the next boy in line, chasing a place in a team being built out of war's ashes. He wasn't tall, wasn't loud. The coaches called him calm, opponents called him gone. 11th April 1953. His debut, Newcastle United the opponent. No headlines, no handshake from legends. Just a slim lad in red doing exactly what was expected of him. He didn't chase the ball, he welcomed it. He didn't wave to the crowd, he made them stand up anyway. Matt Busby didn't need theatre, he needed trust. And Dennis Viollet gave him that from day one. They called them the Busby Babes. But inside that velvet smooth side, there was steel. And his name was Dennis Viollet. By 1955, he was no longer the quiet kid. He was the man who finished moves before the defenders even turned. Tommy Taylor, strong, explosive, fearsome in the air. Viollet low, sharp, invisible until it was too late. One was thunder, the other was the blade. Together, they didn't just score, they dismantled. 1955-56, Manchester United win the First Division. 25 wins, 103 goals. Viollet finishes the season with 20th in the league. No penalties, no tap-ins, just precision. 1956-57, they do it again. Back-to-back champions. And Viollet, still cutting through lines like ink across paper. He played inside left, but his timing made him deadly. He wasn't fast. He was cleverer than fast. Defenders marked him. He drifted. Then, one blink, and it was in the net. And on the European stage, he lit up the floodlights. 26 September 1956. European Cup, first round. Manchester United 10, Anderlecht 0. Still the club's biggest win. Viollet scored 4, not danced, scored. No celebration, no pose. Just walked back to the halfway line and waited to do it again. Matt Busby didn't just trust him, he built an attack around him. Because when Viollet was on the pitch, United didn't need a second plan. They were already ahead. 6 February 1958. Munich, slush on the runway. A second takeoff, then the crack. United's plane never made it into the sky. The dream never made it out of the snow. 23 lives lost. 8 of them players. The Busby Babes, broken, frozen in time, scattered across the wreckage. Dennis Viollet survived, barely. His head torn open, his legs crushed. He was pulled from the debris by goalkeeper Harry Gregg, who carried bodies, not fear. It wasn't a team anymore, it was a list of names followed by dates, and the ones who lived never fully returned. Viollet was conscious, but the silence was louder than the pain. He didn't speak about Munich. Not then, not later, not even when asked. Because what could he say? That he lived while the rest of his team stayed buried in German snow? He didn't carry medals, he carried ghosts. And when the bandages came off and the wounds had healed, he went back to the pitch. 3 months later. 3 months. And he walked back onto the grass like nothing had changed except everything had. That season, United reached the FA Cup final. They lost 2-0 to Bolton. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they walked out at all. The point was that Dennis Viollet ran when the pain said, walk, scored when the world said, collapse. He didn't come back for applause. He came back because the dead couldn't. And he played for both of them. He played in the 1958 FA Cup final, not for medals, but for memory, not for glory, but because the names that were gone couldn't play anymore. And then he didn't fade. He didn't hesitate. He started scoring. 1958 to 59, 20 goals in the league. Just months after crawling from wreckage, 1959 to 60, he exploded. 32 league goals in a single season, a record that still stands today at the biggest club in England. He broke the record with no celebration, no interviews, no demands. Just him, walking back to the halfway line again and again. The crowd cheered. He nodded. That was it. Because the applause was never the point. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was honoring ghosts. Every finish was for the ones who didn't get to return. Every goal was one they never got to score. And when the season ended, he walked away from the record like it never mattered. Because to him, it didn't. He was still trying to outrun the silence. And then, they moved on without him. In January 1962, Matt Busby sold Dennis Viollet to Stoke City. £25,000, no fanfare, no protest, no thank you. They said the club was rebuilding. That new forwards were coming in David Hurd. Dennis Law. Dennis Law later admitted in his autobiography, Dennis Viollet was one of the most underrated forwards United ever had. Coming from the man who inherited his number, that meant everything. Law would even inherit his number 10 shirt, the number Viollet had worn through heartbreak and history. Younger, louder, marketable. Viollet didn't argue, didn't complain. He shook hands, packed his boots, and walked out the same way he always did, quietly. No send-off, no mural, just exit papers for the man who still held their scoring record. He had played 293 games for Manchester United, scored 179 goals in all competitions. That's more than George Best, more than most of the legends they built tributes around. But his name was never sung, just filed away. One of the greatest inside forwards the club ever had, and they let him go like he was just another squad number. The fans barely blinked, the media barely noticed. But the record still stands, and it will keep standing long after the banners fade and the documentaries forget who did it first. He didn't sulk, didn't seek revenge. He just did what he always did, laced his boots, and found the net. January 1962. Dennis Viollet joined Stoke City. No headlines, no promises, just another old striker, they said. Linking up with legends past their prime, including Stanley Matthews, he didn't just belong, he elevated, quiet, fading, forgotten. But the goals didn't care about that. By the end of the 1962-63 season, Stoke had won promotion from the second division. And Viollet, 23 goals, top scorer, again. He wasn't doing it to prove anything. He was just doing his job. They gave him the number 10 shirt. And he wore it the way he did everything, without fuss, without ego. Over the next 5 years, he played 207 matches for Stoke in all competitions, scored 66 goals. He gave them experience, gave them standards, gave them calm when it mattered. 1964, League Cup final. Stoke versus Leicester City. Viollet scored. Stoke lost 4-3. No medal, no mourning. Just him walking off, again after giving everything. The headlines were elsewhere. New stars were rising, but Dennis Viollet was still doing what most couldn't. Scoring, leading, building a second career with the same humility as the first. No one outside Stoke noticed. But inside the dressing room, he was trusted. And when the younger players asked how to survive the noise, he pointed to the scoreboard. And nothing else. He could have walked away. Played his last game, let the silence catch him. But Dennis Viollet never stopped moving. In 1967, he crossed the Atlantic and joined the Baltimore Bays as player coach in the NASL's inaugural 1967 season. Different game, different country, same focus. No one there knew about Munich. No one remembered the goals at Old Trafford. To them, he was just Coach Dennis, and that was enough. He played, coached, built youth systems, stayed when others flew home. After a brief spell at Linfield, where he helped win the Irish Cup in 1970, he returned to America. And this time, he didn't leave. He took charge of the Jacksonville T-Men, won the American Soccer League title in 1983, later managed the Richmond Kickers and led them to the USISL double in 1995. While others chased interviews, he was out on training pitches with kids who barely knew his name, teaching them how to see the game the way he always had early. Quietly. Precisely. He coached at Jacksonville University, led college sides, ran community camps, never shouted, never pointed to his past. He wasn't there for credit, he was there for the next goal. And if you ask the players he coached, many will tell you he was the first person who ever made them believe they could be more. He didn't wear medals, he wore trust, he didn't carry the record, he carried purpose. And across Florida, for a generation who never watched United in the 50s, Dennis Viollet was the game. He didn't chase legacy, he chased purpose. And in the end, he didn't get the tribute. He got the silence. In 1997, Dennis Viollet was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, a tumor perhaps seated in the wreckage of Munich. One final legacy of those head wounds pulled from the snow. No headlines, no campaigns, just quiet suffering like everything else in his life. He passed away on the 6th of March, 1999, in Jacksonville, Florida. Aged 65, thousands of miles from Old Trafford, far from Wembley, far from Munich. Manchester United wore black armbands. A few remembered. A few stood still. But the wider game moved on like it always does. No statue, no stand, no bust in a museum. Just a single line in the club's history books, 32 goals. One season, still the record. And yet, there were those who didn't forget. He even wore the Three Lions twice against Scotland. On 9th April 1960, he scored in a 5-2 win at Hampden Park. And played again on 15th April 1961 1-1 draw at Wembley. But even the national team didn't seem to see him. In Florida, they created the Viollet Cup, a match played between the colleges he helped shape. In 2002, he was inducted into the US Soccer Hall of Fame. In 2014, his daughter Debbie released the ESPN co-produced documentary, A United Man. Because someone had to. Because when a man gives everything and walks away with nothing, silence is not a tribute, it's a failure. Dennis Viollet didn't live for fame, but that doesn't mean he should be left behind. He was the record holder, the Munich survivor, the one who returned when others couldn't, and delivered when no one expected him to. He didn't write books, didn't tell stories, he just scored, and then coached, and then left quietly like always. Subscribe if you believe football shouldn't forget the men who gave it everything and asked for nothing.